SAP's cloud business for Australia and New Zealand. I had been here in Australia for almost like 5 years now. So that's all about me.
Thanks, Sharad.
Thank you.
Vinay? Hi, Vinay. Hey, Vinay. Vikram? Why aren't people speaking up?
Guys, this is an opportunity for you to promote your startup. So talk about your startup.
Anuj? Anuj, are you there?
Yeah, good morning. Good morning. Actually, I was having some audio issues.
Yeah.
I didn't hear you. Sorry.
Yeah, Anuj, would you like to give your introduction very quickly?
Yeah, I'm a banking professional and I have been very active in the startup space for the last 10 years. I've been trying few ideas, testing, taking feedback and like, so I'm still working on few ideas along with my job. So that's it. I haven't started it. I haven't listed my company yet, but I'm working on some hyperscalable models now.
Cool, thanks.
Related to technology. Yeah.
Welcome. Satish Krishnakumar, do you want to, can you unmute yourself and introduce, please?
Hi, good morning. Satish
Good morning.
here. Yeah. So I was looking to start a logistics startup. So I have formed a company in February 2020. So due to this pandemic, so I just took more time and I was just still working out on the concept. So I was just participating in all these kind of webinars. So to get more ideas and to implement it. That's it.
Sure, thanks. Sonali, Soumya, Vikram, Vinay, Zafar. Can you unmute and please introduce?
Yeah.
Hello. Abhijit. So it'll help if we can make it interactive. Abhijit? All seem to be on their daily course with the mute button off, with the mute button on.
Yeah, hi, good morning.
Yeah, hi.
This is Vinay. I am basically a finance professional and I am a bit new to the startup domain, but I have some ideas which I want to explore it further, which is into agriculture domain, agriculture tech, basically. So the idea was to understand, have a better understanding on the opportunity
Sure.
from the startup.
Thanks, Vinay. Welcome to the workshop. Simi, Sonali. Sonali, are you around? Soumya? Zafar? Wow. Maybe we can start. So, yeah, Sonali, come in. Please.
Yeah, hi, good morning. I'm Sonali. I've started my own consultancy services for business registrations. So normally what happens if you want to start a business, you have to run here and there for registering your business. So here with me, you need not to run anywhere. You can just send me all the documents and I'll do the everything for you. Means 90% of your work will be done from my side. This is what I'm doing.
Sure. Thanks, Sonali. Welcome to the workshop.
Thank you.
Okay. I believe others want to be in the listening mode today. Okay. Good morning, everybody.
Good
Whoever
morning.
has introduced, thanks for that. And whoever hasn't during the course, if you would like to unmute yourself, raise your hand. If there are any questions during the workshop, we would urge that you type it on the group chat, and we will take it at logical stop points that we will have during the session. My name is Sudeep Bhattacharya, and I'll be conducting this workshop with Ravi delivering the entire workshop's insights that we all have been thinking we need. And today's workshop has been requested. I mean, we have conducted this workshop earlier as well, multiple times, and this is a workshop that gives an opening to all the aspiring entrepreneurs to figure out how to think about creating a fresh startup. What are the aspects that can take us through a sustainable venture? We have also experienced that early stage entrepreneurs who have already started gain a lot by the kind of structure that Ravi will bring to the table today. Request is to keep it interactive so that your takeaways are maximum and you don't have to keep moving around workshop by workshop to seminar across the globe. So hopefully you'll be able to take a lot of benefit out of this. Ravi's introduction, I believe you would have seen through in the profile published. However, just to give a background, Ravi graduated from IIT Kanpur in a year when neither the US aspiration was out in the market, nor most of us were even born. So he graduated in 1975, and post that, very interestingly, he pursued his own passion instead of going after the corporate jobs that was picking up in those times. And having successfully built a couple of businesses, and then has been coaching a lot of startups and SMEs for the last 6 years. It's a privilege that we have him today, and we really want some great insights and the thinking to be brought into the game instead of just the doing part of let's do it to set up the ventures. And over to Ravi. He will take you through the rest of the workshop. Welcome, Ravi.
Thank you, Sudhir. Morning to you, everybody. I mean, it's very nice of you to spare your Sunday first half for being here. Hopefully, we'll make it worth your while. And without any more delay, let me actually start my PPT. And here it goes. Okay. Sudeep, is my voice clear, audible? Is the screen visible?
Yes, very clear and loud.
Okay, great. So we're going to be looking at how do you actually take an idea? How do you decide which idea would really be worthwhile chasing? And how do you figure out that it is really an opportunity for you? That will be the focus of today's workshop. And before we actually go into it, I see a lot of new people on this website, on this webinar, and except perhaps Simi and Sharad. And so I would like to briefly take you through what is our philosophy. Why are we doing whatever we are doing? We spent a lot of time thinking about why do 95% startups fail. My own personal experience with SMEs has been that beyond a point, they find it very difficult to grow. And having thought really deeply about it, that why is it that SMEs and startup entrepreneurs have similar issues? And interestingly, while SME entrepreneurs don't have the kind of education background or the peer group learning which startup entrepreneurs have, but their problems are similar. So then for us, it was necessary to figure out if education is not making a difference, if peer group learning is not making a difference. What is it that is holding back entrepreneurs? So here's what we figured out. As far as the Indian entrepreneurship ecosystem is concerned, BICE has been looking at this, especially startup entrepreneurship, since September 2018 specifically. We have been working with startups on one-on-one basis before that, from 2013 to 2016. And then in 2016, we started BICE, and actually then in September 2018, we brought a sharper focus and made it a more widespread activity. Our starting up premise. So in our startup coaching, we actually stress on that you need to be very clear about what is your starting hypothesis on which you're building your startup. And that applies for BICE also. So our starting up set of premises were that culturally Indian youths are encouraged to seek jobs rather than entrepreneurship. Consequently, they are not trained or coached to be one. They would rather do something than think, plan, and execute. Consequently, their ability to think through things and problems specific to businesses is not developed with an entrepreneur mindset. And that's very important to remember, because I'll give you examples which will probably resonate with you when you look back at your life. They've always been taught to be more realistic, and rather than be in touch with their emotions, their passions, follow their passions. Consequently, they will not risk all for following their dreams. Let me take you back to your 11th class summer. You passed 11th class and you're going to 12th. And it's summer holidays and you get this idea to make some pocket money and learn how to run a business. You decide to start a small business, maybe an idli stand outside your house. You go to your parents and you say, you know what, I would like to start an idli stand. Guess what would have happened to you? You would have probably been scolded and told that better focus on getting into a good engineering college. You need to build a career. You need to get a great job. And there itself, the entire thing, any initiative that you had surfacing to become an entrepreneur gets killed. The school education system, the college education system does not have anything happening for you in terms of becoming an entrepreneur. So there's nothing happening in your life while you're growing up which actually prepares you for that opportunity. And when we compare this to a Western entrepreneurship ecosystem, we find major differences. We find that youth are encouraged to be entrepreneurs right from their childhood if they show inclination and initiative. One of the best examples I have come across is about one gentleman called Bill Gross, very successful entrepreneur, serial entrepreneur, investor, runs a incubator in US called the Ideas Lab. At age 12, he went to his father and said, I would like to put up a candy stand next to the school bus stop. Father took out $100, gave him $100, he said, go for it. But remember, because I'm giving you $100, I will want 25% of your profit. In that one act, the father did two things. A, he told his son that great to be an entrepreneur, go for it. B, he taught him value of money. He taught him money is not free. Whosoever gives you money will demand a share, even your father. And then that culture actually makes a liberal use of thought frameworks, business models, business tools, coaching. They prepare for pretty much everything. It's amazing what all they have frameworks for, because they have realized that thinking about complex issues and coming out of the plan is not easy. Those of you who have had to, I'll come to that point later. The other thing we have noticed is they have a very high degree of customer centricity and value creation. I have close to 15,000 connections on my LinkedIn account. And I'm really petrified with the quality of direct mailers that I get. They are so poorly written. They have zero customer centricity. and you compare that to a direct mailer that comes from some company in US, it's like as if that company is having a conversation with you. They are so focused on me rather than themselves. They don't tell me about themselves, they focus on me, which is very important because I am the customer. So this is a major difference in perspectives in an Indian entrepreneur and a Western entrepreneur. And then they have highly evolved communication skills and marketing capability. And I don't know how many of us realize this, but that is because they have been encouraged to be in touch with their emotions and their passions from day one. They've been encouraged to talk about themselves, encouraged to talk about their likes and dislikes. It doesn't happen in most of the Indian families. So here's our problem statement based on those hypotheses, that in order for an Indian startup entrepreneur to be successful, he needs to be coached using a combination of thought and business frameworks to help him strategize and then create, execute, review, and refine his operations plan. This phrase, create, execute, review, and refine, is going to be very important. It's going to keep coming again and again in our workshop today. In a structured manner that covers his complete journey from the time he gets an idea till he builds a growing company, creates a growing company. This is our problem statement. And next I'm going to explain to you how do we solve this problem. So we looked at the entire journey and we created this 5 Kazams business evolution framework that leverages a well-established international as well as proprietary business frameworks, because that helps you think through problems to help entrepreneur convert his ideas into a successful company. This is the 5 Kazams framework. To quickly take you through what these Kazams are, the first Kazam is idea to opportunity. You see the red ellipse, dotted line, which highlights your first stage. This is what we're going to be talking about today. Next is customer development. Taking your idea, figuring out it's an opportunity, going out in the market, and then start testing it with customers, whether you're getting traction. What does the customer really want? What are you actually giving him? If you do that successfully, then you have to start thinking about how do I start expanding my minimum value proposition that I started with, and building a full product so that I get more and more customers. If you cross this Kazam also, then the next thing you have to figure out is your business model, which is how are you going to make money? What are the systems and processes you're going to use to run your company? And if you have figured that out, you're making money, highly likely you would have got investment by this stage because investors would see the opportunity. And you would now need to figure out your real go-to-market strategy. This is your main go-to-market strategy. And finally, growth. So these are the 5 Kazams, and we have built frameworks for each stage so that entrepreneurs can apply these frameworks and fix the issues they're facing and figure out what is the right solution. What is the right step forward? How do we do it? We do workshop. This is a workshop which you're participating in. It's an example of what we do. In the workshop, we basically lay down the basic fundamentals and the frameworks, idea about frameworks as to how we work. A number of times, entrepreneurs just understand what needs to be done and they go and completely change their future. They go and set up successful companies. So I'm hoping some of you will actually be able to do that today. Then those who have a specific issue in their journey, which they want addressed, we do one-on-one coach insights, where we help you define a problem using a framework and then get into the analysis of that problem with you and help you figure out the right steps forward. So again, this has been very successful product for us, and a number of entrepreneurs have made significant gains from this. This is something new. We saw that we had entrepreneurs doing multiple coach insights because it was not a simple issue. It was a larger problem that they were trying to solve. They were stuck at one of these Kazams and they needed closer hand holding. In strategy design, we'll get engaged with you over a couple of months, maybe 2 to 3 months, and work with you through the entire thinking, putting the frameworks in place, helping analyze the problem, helping find a direction, and then lay down strategic steps that you would need to take to go past that gap. This is something we started just a few months ago. I think about 7 entrepreneurs have already opted for this. Then we do end-to-end deep coaching, which is hand-holding you through the entire journey, right from the time you have an idea till such time, or anywhere in between, where you feel, okay, you need a coach to help you reach the final growing company stage. So right from that point till you become a growing company, we see you through all stages of investment, we see you through all stages of operations planning and growth, and make sure that you reach that stage where you become a growing company. So this is what we do. I told you what our hypothesis was, what our problem statement was. I told you what was the hypothesis behind the problem statement. I told you how we are solving it. And I've just shared with you what are the products we use to help you in your journey. Moving on beyond this, the core team. I'll not talk about myself. Sudeep did a great job doing that. Anupama Singh, 17+ years of experience, IIT Kanpur. 2 successful startups into her 3rd. Sudeep Bhattacharya, 18+ years of experience. Very, very rich high technology product development experience. Has co-founded 3 startups, successfully exited 2. That's the core team. We have 12 facilitators and domain experts who we bring in for a specific role in our engagements if required. Okay, moving on. Today's workshop will actually cross 3 stages. The first stage would be to talk about you. Okay, how do you figure out that you really are on the right journey? You have those entrepreneurship inclination, and you are willing to put in the work to become one. We'll quickly go through that part because I think it's extremely important. We have spoken to a lot of entrepreneurs who say, you know what, I'm going to try this for a couple of years. I'm fresh out of college. Even if I lose 2 years, no problem. I will go back to a job if this does not work out. I can guarantee that it will not work out because the person already has a parachute. He doesn't have self-belief. So we'll go into that. The second part we will cover is what is it about a startup that you will have to think about and figure out, okay, if this is what a startup is, then what is the nature of business that I will need to set up? Because your idea must align with the nature of business that you have to set up. And the third part we'll cover is, okay, you cross this part, you checked yourself, you said, yes, I want to be an entrepreneur. 2, you did the reality check about what a startup really means. And you tick off everything, say, yes, my idea will conform to this. Then finally, okay, now how do we actually choose the right idea amongst maybe a bunch of them? So these are the 3 things we'll cover today. Moving on. So what must a successful business idea, what are the criteria a successful business idea must meet? There are 3 conditions. First of all, it must do a job a customer is wanting to do in a better manner, preferably at a lower cost with very little pain of adoption. Because if there is no customer who's wanting to do the job which your product will perform, you don't have a market. So this is the first test for your idea. The second test is, will it have a large market that is willing to accept it because of unique values that differentiates it from the competition? Jio is the best example. There was a large market where data consumption requirement was not fulfilled. And Jio just stepped into that market and created a huge opportunity for themselves. Third, will it have a mechanism of making revenue? Very important. Tapzo was a fantastic product that was built by a bunch of very smart engineers, very successful, had a lot of users, but they didn't know how to make money. Finally, the company got acquired by, I think, Amazon for the team and the technology. But the business did not have a business model. These are the 3 conditions you must test your idea against to begin with. Moving on. Let's get into, okay, how do you define a startup? Why is this important? Because unless a lot of us think, oh, I've got a startup, but you need to figure out, is it just a regular business or is it a startup? So we'll go a little deeper into it and think about and discuss what is it that your idea must deliver in order to be qualified as a startup idea. So here is how Ministry of Commerce defines a startup. That it's actually April 2018 now, it was updated. So here's the thing, must be less than 5 years old, should not have turnover exceeding 25 crores in last 5 financial years. But this is the key: innovating, developing, deploying, and commercializing. This is the important part. Innovating, developing, deploying, commercializing. What? A new product, a process, or a service. How? Driven by technology or intellectual property. This is how they define it. To this, we have added a clause, or opening new geographies or customer segments. So for example, Amazon started selling books in US and Flipkart started doing it in India. So even though Flipkart was doing exactly what Amazon was doing, but to change the geography and customer segment. Flipkart has become a full-fledged e-commerce company, but restricted to tier 1 towns. Meesho realized an opportunity and they brought in e-commerce to tier 2, tier 3 towns. So here's again what Meesho did, exactly what Flipkart does, but changed the geography, changed the customer segment. So it became a startup and a very successful one, well-funded. So given this definition, what is it that your idea must actually deliver? How do you establish value that your idea actually is a startup idea? So the first question you have to answer is, what will you be innovating? Product or service, prevailing business model, business process, revenue model? What will it be driven by? New technology or intellectual property?
Hello.
Yeah, hi Sudeep.
Yeah, I think Ravi got disconnected. Let me bring him back. Guys, Ravi got disconnected due to a glitch. He is joining. Hi Jaideep, hi Preeti. We have a glitch where Ravi has got disconnected. We're just waiting for him to join back. Yeah, he's reconnecting now. Just wait, give him a minute or so. In the meantime, for whatever we have discussed so far, is there any question? Any clarifications that you would like us to take?
Not so far from my side.
Okay.
Sorry guys, my laptop crashed and I had to restart.
Yeah, we can continue, Ravi sir.
Okay. Okay, this is where we were, and so the question that really you'll have to put your idea to test with is what will you be innovating? What will it be driven by? New technology, IP, or will it be in a new geography or a new customer segment? Okay. Let's take an example of new customer segment. Today, doing credit rating for people who don't have credit history, especially in the lower middle class, is an issue. And there are a lot of startups who got into that space because the market is very big. In a country which is so huge, about 160 crore people, the total number of credit cards are, I think, about 120 million. That's it, 12 crores. And so there's a very small percentage of people who have credit, and this does not account for people who have multiple cards. So probably the number is far lower. And I think the unique number of people who hold credit card is about 40 million, 4 crores, a very small number. So credit history is a big issue in India. So you could figure out a startup where you could just create credit histories for people, lower middle class, who don't have a credit history. So getting back, now, while you think about this, you should also, the moment you have an idea, you also need to think about these 5 things right from day one. My business strategy, my funding strategy, my go-to-market strategy, my revenue model, my business model. I understand that initially you will not have enough answers, but it doesn't matter. It's like getting into practice. If you want to learn a new game, you can't start beating people on day one. You want to learn badminton, you can't start defeating people on day one. but you'll have to start learning. You learn bit by bit. It's exactly the same, because these 5 things will actually lead you to your business plan. So this combination, figuring out the 3 questions that you see on the left-hand side, and the 5 frameworks that you need to apply to build your business plan. Because with a business plan, however sketchy it is, you can create a pitch deck, you can create a single-page letter to reach out to people and explain to them what you're doing. In my experience, I haven't found a single entrepreneur who is at the idea stage and has a business plan, which is something that you guys need to fix. The next thing you have to ask yourself, okay, fine, I'm innovating, I'm going to use technology, and it will be a new geography. The question you have to ask is, okay, how are you going to be different? Because that will make the market large for you. So are you going to truly disrupt the market? I have seen a lot of startups say, I'm going to disrupt the market. And when you ask them, what exactly is going to change? The answer is not there. What does disruption really mean? Disruption means whatever you're doing, it will change the manner in which humans were working earlier in a totally different manner. Example, Redbus. Earlier, you went to travel agents' counters to book a bus ticket. Now you could do it from the comfort of your home on internet. Uber. Earlier, you had to call up some taxi company, and maybe hour, 2 hours, they would send you a cab. Now you just pick up a phone, book a cab, and 5 minutes it's there. And so they created a platform where people who wanted to drive cabs and people who wanted cabs, they brought them together. They changed the way how you booked cabs. They changed the way who drove cabs. In my conversation with Uber or Ola cab drivers, when I asked them, okay, what were they doing before? I am so surprised. There are people who were in sales and accounts and admin who had a job, who left their jobs and started driving a car. Something we could never have imagined earlier. So this question you'll have to ask, how will my idea disrupt the market? Or will it just make sustainable improvements? So for example, today you buy a phone with certain memory, certain camera size, etc., etc. 6 months later, another phone comes along, bigger display, more memory, faster processor. 6 months later, another one comes. These are sustainable improvements. You do something, your competition will catch up within, not immediately, but maybe 6 months, 1 year, next cycle. Or even go beyond. It will do something which will be better than yours. The third is, you're just driving efficiency innovation. People are doing things in a certain manner, you do it faster, you do it better. If you look at competition between Zomato and Swiggy, it's an example of efficiency innovation. Most e-commerce companies are stuck in efficiency innovation today. They cannot disrupt. I think the only disruption I'm seeing in e-commerce market is what Amazon is doing with Amazon Go. It's a completely contactless store. They got 25 such stores opened in US. There is nobody at the billing counter. They have now a cart which is an intelligent cart. You pick up an item and you keep it in the cart. Cart knows what you bought. Cart has a tablet on top. You can keep entering in the tablet what do you want. It will take you there. And ultimately, because your account is linked, you simply walk out. There is no counter to bill you at. Now that is disruption. They're completely disrupting physical stores because they're changing how you buy stuff in a store. So you have to have this clarity that what am I really innovating? Because without this, you will be lost. You will not be able to make your marketing statements. You will not be able to make your pitch deck, or you will make it with wrong messages, and you will not get funded, and your customer will not believe you. You need to have this very sharp clarity. Moving on. So we saw one definition, but this is the definition which we use at BYS, which is because we believe a startup is a business to begin with. And a lot of entrepreneurs actually don't get it, that I am setting up a business and it has to be profitable. Most startups, most entrepreneurs we have seen as, oh, if I do a startup, I'll get funded. Biggest misconception. Business ideas don't get funded. Business opportunities get funded. So what is a startup? A startup is a business with an uncertain future. Why is it uncertain? Because you're trying to do things in a manner no one has done before. There is no role model. Flipkart could have failed in India. Meesho could have failed in tier 2, tier 3 towns. And so what are you doing? You're basically trying to address a problem a customer is facing. Where is he facing it? In a job he's attempting to perform or wants to perform. In a manner no one has addressed earlier. That is where the uncertainty is coming from. Because you are trying to do it differently. If your business is not attempting to help a customer perform a job differently, it is not a startup. It's a regular business. Nothing wrong with that, but then look at it as a regular business and run it like a regular business. And it is based on a set of hypotheses. If you recall, I took you through what were our hypotheses, what was the problem statement, what was the solution. It is the same principle that is being taught here, discussed here. And if you address the problem successfully, that is customer development, you find customers, and you are now trying to expand your product market fit by growing your product inventory. As I showed you, we've added a product called Strategy Design. We've expanded the product because we realized that there are customers who are wanting that product. But it couldn't have happened unless we had done customer development for the last 2 years. So if problems are addressed successfully within a defined business model, you have to make money, then it should have a possibility of making humongous future profits. This is what gets you funding from VCs. So whatever idea you have, it must conform to this definition. If it doesn't conform to this definition, you have to change your idea or you have to run a regular business. So depending on what you want to do. So what is the must-have ideas filter for knocking out ideas? Create a compelling breakthrough opportunity through disruptive innovation or disruptive business model or defensible technology. Because if you don't have a compelling breakthrough opportunity, you may not have a great startup. Pick up a big fight. Don't pick up a small fight. Pick up a fight where the market is very large. Because when the market is large, when the problem is large, it will lead to big opportunities. So for example, traffic problem in Bangalore, huge problem. COVID problem, huge problem to pick up. There are so many more such problems which are very large. They may look very simple to you, but it's a large problem. So find those big fights so that the market is huge, so that you can generate humongous future profits by capturing more and more of the market. And you must create a large sticky community. Your users, once they come onto your platform, should stick to your platform. They shouldn't go away. So do you have an engaging product? Is it easy to use? Your idea must comply to these 3 conditions. Okay, quickly summarizing. We looked at government definition of startups and we came to some conclusion that, okay, this is what an idea must actually qualify. And before that, we gave 3 conditions, and we're really talking about those conditions in more detail now. Then we looked at BYS's definition of startup, and we came to this must-have ideas filter, that these 3 things must happen if you want to build a startup. If you want to build up a regular business, it doesn't have to be a compelling breakthrough opportunity, but it has to be differentiated. It doesn't have to be a big fight, but it must have a sticky community. So creating a differentiated opportunity is another filter you have to apply onto your idea. The next question, okay, you got the idea, you will have to start thinking, okay, what will drive traction? What will make this idea successful and more customers will join? We'll go a little deeper into this, but I want to put this in front of you right now so that you start thinking about it. What is the nature of need that is underlying the job that the customer is trying to perform? Is it a latent critical need? The need can be latent or blatant, critical or aspirational. So figuring out the nature of need becomes very critical. What is the underlying problem behind that need that you will need to address? It could be an unworkable problem or an unavoidable problem or an urgent problem. We'll go deeper into it. So for example, you see on the left, Trump and Xi Jinping. Can you get these two guys to work together? That's an unworkable problem to solve. Or you're just automating a task or making it more efficient. You need to figure these things out. The next thing you'll have to start thinking about, okay, what will be your pricing strategy? How are you going to compete as far as prices are concerned? Will you compete with the incumbent? Because there might be giants already in the market. How are you going to compete with them? You have to think about this, and you could say, okay, I'm going to come at bottom of the market, which is the next strategy. Or you could say, no, I'll compete with the incumbent, but I'll make the product better. I'll be more efficient in service delivery. My customer centricity will be better. Sure, those things can also help you win. So enter bottom of the market, which is a price fight. Or you could go to areas where that service or a product is not being consumed. Meesho is an example of that. So you will have to start thinking from the time you get the idea, okay, what will be the pricing strategy for these ideas? Everything else that we told you and this. The other things you must bear in mind, what will decide whether your idea will succeed into a good business opportunity or not. It's good to understand what makes startups succeed, because you will then have to start testing it for this. First of all, timing. Is my timing right? This is numbers that I'm showing you from a study done by Bill Gross, the gentleman I mentioned earlier, who his company surveyed 200 successful startups. And this is the response they got. Timing was right. 42% said timing was right. We were there at the right time. A best example is Airbnb. Airbnb launched their product when there were, typically in US, what happens, there are some cities, actually most cities, where seminars, workshops are held, and there are seasons. And hotel rooms are just not available. And people are coming for 1-2 days. They don't want to get a hotel environment. They want to really get a home feeling. And Airbnb picked up that opportunity. Timing was just right. The second highest parameter was team and its execution capability. More than your idea, execution becomes far more important. So you'll have to think about this when you get the idea. You'll have to examine yourself. What are my execution capabilities like? And then go from there. 28% said idea. Idea was great. And it is quite possible that some of them had combination. They would have voted for all these. So somebody who said timing was right also said great execution and great idea. 24% said business model was right. So business model is something you can always fine tune. 14% said funding happened at the right time. Funding helped us. Look at the small percentage. In US, typically companies get funded only after they have been there for 3 to 5 years. And they have become operationally profitable. Don't go by news items where somebody got funded very early. There is history to those cases. But 95% people who get funded are because they have reached a certain level of operational maturity. So operational maturity will be very critical. You have to think about that from day one. Okay, reasons for failure. Why would probably a company fail? Let's look at that. You're not serving a market need. So you will have to start examining. Remember that ideas filter. large problem to solve. You did not have a financial plan in place, you ran out of cash. You did not take, remember we spoke about competitive strategy, we said compete with the incumbents, bottom of the market, or go to an area where there is no consumption. Don't ignore competition. You have a flawed, weak, untested business model. You've not thought about your business model. Very risky. Don't have a user-friendly product or a service. You'll have to test it. Customer dev stage, you'll have to keep testing. How? Because that will create stickiness. You're not taking customer feedback. Remember the point we made about customer centricity? I find this a very common problem with most of the startups. Zero attention to marketing. Why zero attention to marketing? Because most entrepreneurs come from an engineering operations background. They don't come from sales and marketing background. And they have never done marketing, because marketing is all about emotions. And nobody has taught you to be in touch with your emotions. Nobody has taught you to express your emotions. Which is why most entrepreneurs make a very bad job of this and probably just hand it over to some digital marketing company. Digital marketing companies are not marketing companies. They are marketing operations companies. If you have a marketing strategy in place and a marketing plan in place, you can go with that plan and tell a digital marketing company, please execute this. Pricing is not figured out. We do a workshop on pricing strategy, which helps you think through, okay, how are you going to decide your price? You're too early to the market. You're not ready. Market is, the timing is wrong. Don't have the right team in place. One founder is the most dangerous way to build a company. Typically 3 founders are required. We do another workshop on how do you decide team, where we cover this in detail. Too many copycats. There is no differentiation. Again, your idea is going to fail. So if any of this sounds familiar, please work on it. Solve it. One thing you have to remember, that startup is not a smaller version of a large company, because large companies at their core execute. Give me a minute. Thanks. Okay, large companies execute known business models. You have to discover your business model. If it's a true startup, they used well-established business processes, systems, and management practices. You are going to discover them. What is the right process for you? What systems will you need to create? What management practices you'll have to follow? This will have to be discovered in your business model. Startup is based on passion and faith from day one. Remember that it's based on set of hypotheses. You have to truly believe in this and say, yes, you know what, this has to be done. Fundamentally, it's an irrational idea because nobody has tested it earlier. You're going to do it for the first time. And it's based on a series of untested hypotheses. You could be completely wrong. Our own personal experience and bias is when I started in 2016, I had to keep fine-tuning my model till actually we figured out 2018 what the model should be, and then we started giving it a shape, and even since then we've been fine-tuning it. It's an ongoing work. It's now 4 years we've been doing this BICE. And we have constantly been fine-tuning our business model, our product offering, to make sure that we are really serving the market. So your job is to turn that faith into fact as quickly as he can. Validate the hypothesis with as many customers as possible, as early as possible, because that will reduce your costs. So remember that you will have to think about these things when you are testing your bunch of ideas. Okay, so you have an aha moment, you have an idea. Question is, so we've seen what a business idea must have. Question is, how does it now become a successful business? The key to that is really you. It starts with you. you have an idea and you think it's a great product or a service that you can create, what will ensure success? What is the first thing that you need to make sure will ensure success? The first thing is you. And how do you figure that out? What will you need to know about yourself? What does the world need? You have a great idea. Does the world need it? You'll have to answer that question. What do you love doing? I'll give you my personal example. I used to love painting and carpentry. I still do carpentry. But had I made painting and carpentry my profession, I would probably have been more happy than what I'm doing today or what I have done for my life. But instead, I became good at engineering, especially computer science. And that's what I got paid for most of my life. So this is a really beautiful framework. It's called Ikigai, I-K-I-G-A-I. It helps you discover what are you really passionate about. So if all four things come together, that you are good at what you love doing and you can get paid for it and the world needs it, that is really what's going to give you your purpose, and you will be have such a sharp razor focus on it. So my guidance to you, my advice to you is please go online. There's enough material available on Ikigai. Please put it to test. Figure out what do you really want to do. Will you devote rest of your life to building what you're saying you want to build? Okay, moving on. Amazing, this is what Aristotle said way back, few millenniums back. Find your purpose, where the needs of the world and your talent cross. There lies your vocation. Okay, so what defines a good business opportunity, right? Let's look at that. It should meet following criteria. High gross margins. Those of you who don't understand gross margins is revenue minus your cost of goods sold is your gross margin. Potential to reach break-even cash flow within 9 to 12 months. This you will figure out through your financial plan and your funding plan. So if you've not done that, you won't know answer to this. Your startup capital investment must be realistic and within the range of what you can personally provide. Because initially you will have to put your money assume that for next 9 to 12 months, you will be putting in the money. So will you reach break-even cash flow with your own money? Need to think through. Personal strength and ability needed to drive the business to success. This is where Ikigai will help you. There are other frameworks also. There is a framework from Gartner called Strength Finder. And there is a framework called MBTI. These three things together will really help you figure out that, is this something you really want to do? Because you can't afford to get discouraged. It's a long journey. It's a hard journey, but it's a fantastic journey. Your level of enthusiasm must be very high because your team will learn from that. Your team will be as enthusiastic as you are. Your business must generate a residual income, which means it must keep earning from customers regularly. You shouldn't have to go out and keep selling again and again. Your business has to keep improving with time. And you should have a low level of liability risk. Investors invest in business opportunities and ventures, not in business ideas. So make sure that, okay, your idea is actually going to stand to these criteria. Okay, I'm going to take a pause here because now we're going to move to the final part of this workshop, which is how do you really choose a right business idea? How do you figure it out that this is the right business idea? So I'll give you a bunch of criteria. Now, how do you really analyze an idea and figure out, yes, this is it. This is the one we should really go for. So, Sudeep, I'm going to stop here and we can take questions if people have questions.
Yeah, there are 2 questions already on the group chat. One is from Abhijit. Please help us to understand how startup is different from an SME.
Very good question. Very good question. So small and medium enterprises, right? SMEs are regular businesses. There is already a role model out there. Somebody else is doing it and you do it also. As per government definition, which has recently changed, SME is anybody whose turnover is, I think, from 50 crores to 1,000 crores, I think, or 10,000 crores. I'm not very sure. So a business for which there's already a role model, the business model is predictable, banks will understand it. If you go and say, I'm going to set up a printing press, it's understood. I'm going to set up a restaurant, business model is understood. But if you tell a bank, I'm going to set up a virtual kitchen, banks don't get it. Because virtual kitchen is not a regular business. So SMEs are, by government definition, companies with a certain turnover, but by the nature of business, doing a business which is already out there being done by others. So Abhijit, I hope that answers your question.
Okay, Abhijit, you're still on mute. There's a second question from Satish. Can we go ahead to launch a new service in niche segment before market research? Or is it better to have market research beforehand?
So Satish, this is what we call customer dev. First, you have to figure out, and what I'm going to show you how to figure out that idea. Apply these frameworks, apply what we have taught you so far. And first figure out, yes, this idea makes sense. Then you have to start testing it. You'll have to choose customers very carefully and start testing it. And the next set of slides is going to help you figure out how do you choose customers, who to go to first, who to go to next. So my advice to you is your market research is best way is to take that idea in its rawest form, minimum value proposition. So go start talking to your potential customers, see what they tell you. And based on that, keep refining the idea, make an MVP, minimum value proposition, minimum value product, which does not require too much investment, and see if customer is willing to commit money to it. If he is, then you start, and in your case, Satish, if I remember correctly, you're going to be in services business, logistics company.
Yes, right.
Yeah, so nothing wrong with that, niche market, but don't go looking for VC funding, not going to happen. Because niche market means the business is small. So set it up as a business.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, good. So, no other questions?
No other questions, sir.
Okay, let's go back. So this is Weaver. So there is this beautiful framework called Ideas Funnel. Innovation Idea Funnel, which actually we use within BYS to help those people figure out who got a bunch of ideas, and we help them figure out which idea makes sense. So usually our coaches will actually use the framework to help you analyze, because for somebody who's doing it for the first time, it might get a little difficult for him to understand. He has to put in a lot of work. This is where coach insight or strategic coaching actually really helps an entrepreneur. And today I'm really going to focus on how do you do idea brainstorming? How do you think about an idea, whether this idea makes sense? And when you look at ideas, how do you choose between ideas? You use what we call a tournament method, which is you do a round robin or knockout. You compare two ideas, decide which is better, throw away the one which is not good. Pick up next idea, compare the winner, and go on that way. A round robin, you compare each idea with every other idea, give it a score, and then create a priority list. Because when you start examining further, you might come to a conclusion that, okay, even the top rated idea did not have enough potential according to you, or you face some challenge and you want to change the idea. So let us examine what will your customer journey be like. So this is some fantastic research done in 1960s, which US world uses rigorously across large, small companies, startups. Everybody uses it except India. I have not seen Indian entrepreneurs think like this. So this was a study Dr. Rogers was commissioned to perform for American government to figure out how would American farmers adopt new potato seed. American government wanted to increase the potato production. So what Dr. Rogers discovered was that the distribution, adoption showed a distribution, which is called a Gaussian curve. And initially, the potato seed was picked up by innovators. And innovators always look for novelty, something new. And they found only about 2.5% of the total market. And then it was picked up by early adopters who are ready to take risks because it gives them competitive advantage. That market was about 13.5. The real big market were the conservatives who looked specifically for benefits. They didn't want to have competitive advantage, too risky. They didn't want to try something new, but if there were clear proven benefits, they wanted to go for it. Remember, the operative phrase is proven benefits. They want references and they want repeatability. Okay, it has happened this year. Will it happen next year also? Will it happen with next crop also? They want answers to all those questions. So they are not risk prone. They will not take risks. Finally, late conservators who look for ease of use. If new potato seed requires some complex way of sowing, they are not interested. So 68% market is your conservative market. Unfortunately, when a startup entrepreneur starts, he aims at the conservative market. This is how your sales will grow. You will initially be selling to innovators and early adopters. If you don't understand that, your marketing pitch will change. You will be selling benefits to people who are looking for novelty or competitive advantage. So your marketing strategy has to change. Your marketing strategy initially has to be very different. You have to consciously look for people who are either innovators or early adopters. And people buy only for one of these three reasons. They will buy it for novelty, competitive advantage, or benefits. There can be no other reason. There's a fantastic book written Crossing the Chasm by a gentleman called Jeffrey Moore. Please pick it up. It's a Bible for people who want to sell new products. And what this book really tells you is that when you try to move from the first two segments to the main market, there is a huge chasm, and this is where most startups fail. And you have to be aware of this because remember we said novelty, competitive advantage, benefits. Because your initial customer bought it for novelty and competitive advantage. And if you're still pushing the same message, the main market is not going to respond. So they are looking for benefits, repeatability, referenceability. They're looking for all those things. They are pragmatists, followed by real conservatists, and finally skeptics. So your early market is what you really have to focus on. Your idea must find traction with the early market. The mainstream market will follow later. So don't start thinking about the main. You should initially figure out the size of the market, but your initial focus in order to test your idea has to be the early market. This is where actually the startup entrepreneur is aiming, which is the biggest mistake. Actually, he should be really looking for people who are looking for novelty. People who are enthusiasts, technology enthusiasts, who want to try new things, who are ready to take risks. That is your initial customer. And you also adopt some visionaries, people who are looking for competitive advantage as you start getting few customers. After you do this successfully, that is when you try to take the leap across the chasm and you head for main market. But initially, you don't aim at the mainstream market if you want to test your idea. This is what we call the customer development stage. This is where your entire focus has to go. But really, this is where you are. You are at ideation, prototyping, technology creation stage. And this is where your entire focus must be. And anything that you do from here has to be really market driven. Your technology enthusiasts and visionaries, market driven. And you talk to them, you converse with them, you engage with them, and you build your product and you generate your roadmap. This is where your first 100 customers are going to come from. So you have to focus here. The mainstream market is a grow and scale market that comes much later. How does funding get linked to your idea? Because a lot of people run out of money when they're at idea stage and because they have not thought it through. So we're showing you 4 major stages: prototype, pivot, product, which is your first 2 stages of what we showed you in the 5 Cousins framework, followed by build, which is business model, product, services, widen customer base, finally grow and then scale. This is how your sales is going to go, and your profits are actually going to go down because you're spending more than you're earning. And this is what your investment will probably look like, bumps in between. And as you keep going along, your risks is going to go down. So initially, for at least first 10 to 12 months, think of bootstrapping, crowdfunding, go to your friends, raise money, but have a financial plan in place, have a business plan in place. Because without that, you will not have a clue. Once you are successful, you got customers, you can start looking for angel funding and then follow it by seed funding. Really, VC funding is going to happen only after you've discovered business models, not going to happen before. So please keep this in your mind when you're assessing ideas. And start collecting data right from beginning. Understanding the customer and his need. Who's your customer? What is the job he's wanting to perform? What's the nature of need underlying the job? Type of problem he's trying to solve. What will you really innovate? Product, service. I'm just summarizing what I've already told you. Nature of innovation. What will be the pains and gains of your solution? Initially, you're collecting more qualitative data than quantitative. The 3 red questions are very important. How much will you be willing to pay for it? How often? How large is the total market? What will be your addressable market? How much market can you address in the beginning? So that's the quantitative data. These are the 2 sets of data you will start having to collect right at the idea stage. And before you write a single line of code, maybe just do a mock-up. If you're building an app, do a mock-up, go test the market. Okay. So we've been talking about customer jobs again and again, that you have to start thinking about what is the customer trying to do when he is going to, for which he's going to hire your product or your service or your solution. What I'm sharing with you now comes from a publicly published framework called Jobs to be Done, JBTD framework, built by a company called Strategen in 1980s, highly successful and promoted by a number of major management consultants and thinkers. So a customer actually, when he takes a product, he has really 3 kinds of jobs to perform. It's a functional job, or it's an emotional job, or it's a social job. Examples. You just got a new job with a consulting company and they want you to wear a suit to office. You have to have a coat, you have to have a tie. You've never worn a coat and tie in your entire college life. So you go buy a coat and a tie because that it's a functional requirement. In order to perform this job, you'll have to wear this. Okay, you got your job and you liked somebody and you also got a date with that person. Now you want to wear good clothes for the date. Now it's an emotional job. It's no longer a functional job. So you go on a date and God willing, the relationship prospers. And your partner tells you, hey, I need to attend this wedding. I want you to come for this wedding. Now you find out that you are required to wear a sherwani. It's no longer functional. Now it is a social job. You're going to wear the sherwani just for that marriage. So this is how you have to think, that what is the nature of job the customer is trying to perform, so that you really understand, what am I required to do? How will I communicate with him? If it is functional, it will be about features. If it is emotional, it will be about feelings, what the person will feel like. If it is social, then it is again about brand that the person must present in that function. So your marketing messaging will change. How you treat that entire engagement will change. Remember, it is more difficult to sell emotional jobs than functional jobs. So moving on, this is the first thing you have to figure out. And then each job has 8 steps. And this is standard. You have to break the job down, because you can just pick up one of the steps and work on that. Define, locate, prepare, confirm, execute, monitor, modify, conclude. So you could, so for example, let's take that same example of, we said identifying. So you could build an app which helps people locate suits, a dress of their choice. So it could be a comparison site. You can collect information from all e-commerce sites and start presenting it to the person. So this is what's happening at Flipkart. And then you can build content around fashion. Or you could prepare, you could get rates, compare rates, help person negotiate, probably get trials, prepare. So you can decide, this way you can analyze a job and decide, this is the most critical step and this is where I will focus. Because what this does is it narrows down what you really have to do. So first, previous slide, we showed you, how do you pick up and analyze a job? What do you really look for? Then break the job into steps and say, this is the most critical step. This is where my MVP will be. And then with that MVP, go to customers and start testing it. Is it working? Do they like it? Do they want something more? You can start figuring that out. The next thing you need to do is figure out the underlying need. I remember I told you about latent critical need. So this is a matrix. This is again a need framework, which is called the latent critical matrix, where on the vertical here, you have problem visibility. How obvious is the problem to the customer? Is it latent or is it blatant? So for example, I don't know how many of you noticed in Bangalore, there's a lot of garbage lying on the side of a road. It's not on the road, but on the side of the road. You notice only if you walk past it and get a bad smell, or you accidentally look at it and you say, hey, why have they put all this garbage here? Otherwise, it really doesn't stop your life. Nothing changes in your life. You can carry on the way you are carrying on. So it is a latent problem. Is it critical? If tomorrow, not today because it's not affecting you, but if tomorrow it becomes a source of disease and infection starts spreading from those garbage piles, and you find, animals dead around that garbage pile, sure, that problem which was just aspirational will become critical and it will become blatant. So a nature of problem can change. Same stuff, a situation can change. The same stuff which was lying earlier, not affecting anybody, was a latent aspirational problem. You wished if somebody cleaned this place, it looked better, it won't smell. But the moment it became a point of infection, the same problem moved from latent aspirational to blatant critical. So you have to analyze the idea at this level and figure out what is the nature of need. Something easy to sell is the blatant critical problem. Something that's going to be huge is latent critical problem. So for example, traveling. Let's take another example, iPod. So when iPod was launched, MP3 players already existed, and people were downloading pirated music from all kinds of shady sites. So the downloaded music also had viruses in it. If they ran it, the machines crashed. And also your challenge was that if you wanted to buy that song, you had to buy a complete CD in US, but $9.99, and you wanted just one song. The problem Apple solved was this. So it was an issue. It was latent because you could still get music. Okay, you cleaned up, you checked for virus, but it was a pain. The problem that Apple solved with iPod is they negotiated single song sale with recording companies. I think 3 recording companies. And they started offering this through an iTunes platform legally on iPod. So you installed iTunes on your computer, you downloaded the song, and you moved it to iPod. So all of a sudden, this latent critical problem which people were facing generated huge demand for iPod. And of course, they have a great UI, great experience, all those things were there. But old technology, nothing new. But they disrupted how music was consumed. So that's what a latent critical opportunity is all about. Jio also solved a latent critical problem. The latent critical problem was data was too expensive to consume. Phone bills were unpredictable. You could end up paying 3,000 in one month and 1,000 in next month. Jio took all that problem away. So this need qualification becomes very important in an idea. And can you identify that space which is not served yet? It's easy to capture, easy to defend, do it uniquely based on the need analysis. So jobs, figure out needs, figure out the type of job, figure out the underlying need, and then hopefully you'll pick up a latent critical problem to solve. And then that's going to be a huge opportunity, which we said initially in idea qualification. So successful entrepreneurs excel at identifying latent critical needs. They start with latent critical and convert it into a blatant critical, and which is when the market just explodes for them. So you need to reframe the problem to communicate your value prop so that customers view a latent critical need that they have been living with from a new perspective. Extremely important to do this. Behind every need, there will be a problem to solve. And the problems could fall in 4 categories: unworkable, unavoidable, urgent, or underserved. And let's take an example that you have a sprain in your thigh. It's mild, it's not too bad, but you can still drive your bike and you can reach your office. So you continue going. So it's a problem you're having, but it's underserved. If it goes away, great, but nothing is really breaking down. You can continue your life, you can go to office, everything is still fine for you. But then what happens is you find that the pain has actually got worse, and now you can't drive your bike, but you have a car. So the problem is urgent. You will need to solve it so that you can go back on your bike. But for the time being, because you've got a huge project going on, you can't get leave to go to a doctor and fix this problem or rest. So you live with it. But now you find that, changing accelerators, gears in car has further created a problem for you. It's become unavoidable. You will have to fix it. But guess what? You say, okay, forget it. I can't go to a doctor now. I'll take a cab. So the problem has become unavoidable. You'll have to solve it somewhere in future. It's like tax returns. You can postpone it, but one day you'll have to pay. And you continue in a cab, but now you find that, you can't even walk. Now it has become unworkable. You will have to fix it. So if you can find an unworkable problem behind a latent critical need for a job that is functional in nature, that's a great idea to have. This is what these frameworks help you do. Figure that out. From customers' perspective, figure out jobs to do, underlying needs, problems, and tasks to perform. Figure out whether the need is critical or aspirational. Figure out the intent. Is it functional, social, or emotional? Remember the 3 kinds of jobs? Figure out gains. Are these gains a customer requires? Are these gains he expects? Requires is chahiye. We want it. I want it now. Expects is, I'm expecting you'll do this for me. If you don't, okay, I don't like it, but it's okay. Desire. It'll be great if you gave me these benefits. Surprised by, wow, I didn't expect this. That's the greatest place to be. Pains in adopting your solution. Is it going to be light? That switching to your solution is not an issue, it will not take time. Or is it going to be severe? That's a huge implementation time and a lot of people required to do it. Then his switching is going to be very difficult. Or is it an unrealized pain? Even worse. Because if the pain is unrealized and he faces it, you didn't tell him, you didn't warn him, he's not going to like your software. He's not going to like your solution. So summarizing, customer jobs to do. What should you know? Specific steps and jobs to do that you will address. Nature of need you will satisfy. Type of problem you will address. When you do all this, you'll actually arrive at what we call value proposition framework. This we have developed specifically. It's a proprietary definition. My value proposition, what is the value for customer? Is for target market, target customers. What market segment will you operate in? Who are dissatisfied with current alternatives? Who will you compete with? Our product service provides key problem solving capability. What problem will you solve for the customer? Buy a new product. What does the product actually do? That unlike, how is it better? That unlike current product alternative is better in this manner. So this is one really sharp, crystal clear statement you must arrive at when you do all this analysis. And finally, you must have a business plan. Whatever idea you adopt, you must have a business plan. However raw it is, at whatever early stage you are, must have a business plan. That's it, folks. It's over. The workshop is done. I will now take questions if there are any.
There is one question from Anuj. What is the best way to create MVS? Does that mean minimum viable service, Anuj?
MVP.
All right. I'm not a techie.
That's okay, Anuj. It's not really a technical term, minimum value proposition. So, so remember we said that how will you minimize your cost? If you start, you got an idea, you've done your analysis, you've figured out the underlying need, the underlying Abhijit, I'll come to your question. So we discussed all this. So Anuj, when you start reaching out to customer, so if you got a financial plan in place, the financial plan would have predicted that this is what you're going to spend, this is the money you're going to bring, and this is what you're going to earn. So you have a prediction about how much you're going to earn. So when you start going out and testing with customer in the customer development stage, you will have to start figuring out how much money are customers willing to pay. And you will arrive at an optimal set of features where a customer will say, okay, yes, this is something I will take. And if you met 100 customers and you figure out, so it's like figuring out HCF and LCM. Don't figure out LCM. Figure out the highest common factor. That is your MVP. Because highest common factor means, okay, this is something that everybody will accept. Invariably, what startups do, they find out the LCM. They collect everything that everybody wants and they build a really wide product, spend a lot of money, talk to 10 different types of customers. Biggest mistake to make, because that will take your complete mental bandwidth and financial bandwidth. So find out the highest common set of features which the customers that you have met want and are ready to pay for. That's your MVP. Anuj, does that help?
I'm audible, sir?
Does that help? Does that answer your question? Okay.
Yeah,
You want
Anuj,
to?
you're audible. You can go ahead.
Yeah, actually, my query was that since I'm not having a tech background, is it advisable? Because I have few models in my mind. I worked on few ideas as well. So all these are tech related ideas, and what I need is like I need someone to help me in building these prototypes, like this model. Most of these are SaaS products, software as a service products, like kind of thing.
Got it.
Yeah. So which option is good? Like hiring a tech person in my team. Actually, I don't have a team. Is it okay to rely on a person, or finding a small company who can do this job for me at a minimum cost?
So here's the thing. You remember we said you have to figure out what are you innovating: product, service, business model, process. Okay. If you're innovating business model or a process, then it really doesn't matter who's building the platform for you. You could outsource it.
Okay.
But if the nature of your product or service depends on what you are writing in your code, then you will have to bring it inside. You can do one thing. Initially for MVP, you can source it out. Once you start getting customers' interest, you can then hire a person and start building it.
Okay.
Abhijit, let's come to your question. Abhijit, you can turn the mic on and ask.
Yes, sir. Good morning.
Morning.
Question is basically, I have an idea, but as you have told that it should address because the same work to be done for a small market or a big market. So when I am going for a large market, how to do the market sizing and how to do the business modeling to get the validation of my idea. That was my.
So Abhijit, you remember we spoke about figuring out the job to do, figuring out the underlying need. So at the underlying need stage, when you start figuring out whether it's a latent critical problem or a blatant critical problem, that will start giving you a qualitative sense of how big the market can be. So for example, and I'm taking a really extreme example. If you, Satish, figure out an Ayurvedic antidote for COVID, anybody who drinks this Ayurvedic mixture will not get infected, and you have data to prove it. Is that a huge market or a small market?
Huge market.
See, you didn't have to go and do market research. You're solving a blatant critical problem. Blatant critical problem markets will be large. So if you do a proper analysis of your idea using the frameworks we showed you, you will get a sense. How big is this market? And coming to the addressable market, where should you start? You start figuring out, okay, where will I find technology enthusiasts and people who are looking for competitive advantage? And start identifying those customers, meeting them, figure out what is the minimum set of features required that they will want, for which they will start paying you, and get into business with that. Because if it's a huge market, you can't go spend money figuring out how huge the market is. You can only figure out the size by doing the analysis that we told you, get a sense, qualitative sense. Yeah, this is a big market. We are doing deep coaching for a startup called Veristic Aligners. Veristic Aligners makes transparent teeth aligners. So unlike braces, which are visible, which are wires, and the transparent aligners are plastic, literally like a cover, which sits on top of your entire set of teeth and is transparent. The person in front of you doesn't even realize that you're wearing something on your teeth. Do you think the market will be large or small?
Large market, definitely.
How did you come to that conclusion? You did not do any market study. Because we realize it's a blatant critical problem.
Yeah.
That is how you get a sense of the market. So if you do proper jobs to do analysis, you will get a sense of your market. Next question.
No other questions.
Great. So we are done.
Any more questions?
Sir, Abhijit here. I have another question. The
Yep.
innovation idea funnel that you have shown, we have to work out for all the entities that is the part of the innovation idea funnel.
All the ideas that you have one by one. You figure out all the ideas step. First do the jobs to do analysis. See, first do a first cut quick dirty check, which is jobs to do analysis, underlying need, problem to solve. That will give you sufficient idea. Then pick up a set and then rigorously apply the ideas funnel, innovation funnel.
Okay. Any more questions? There's a request to everybody. See, I'm sharing a link for you to give a feedback on the workshop, as well as, so this is the link. You all can help us get that review comment. It'll help us to provide better insights to you. Yes, Simi, please come.
Morning, Ravi. Hi, Sumi. You did explain about the customers, the Roger graph, where there is initial adopters, novelty adopters, then early adopters who are looking at competitive edge, and the main big segment of customers. So to understand whether your value proposition is going to be adopted by all four of them, what kind of segment of customers you will be looking at to talk with initially?
So Simi, specifically in your case, just to give background, because Simi is a very shy person. She didn't introduce herself.
Oh, no. I was not in a position to talk, actually.
Simi, relax. I'm just pulling your leg. So
Yeah, it's okay.
Simi's currently doing Coach Insight with us. So we know a little more about her business. And so Simi, you have a multi-sided market. You're going to be, your consumers will also use it, and businesses, cosmetic brands will also use it, right?
Yeah.
Now, for you specifically, I would say choose a pragmatic mix of innovators, early adopters, and a few conservative customers, people who are, so that means innovators. Go for startups who you think are going to be innovative and they would love to try new methods. So let us say if you're going to test it with 100 customers, I would pick up at least 40 who are innovators. 40, 50% will be innovators. Then I would pick up another 40% who are early adopters. And 10% would be conservative customers, larger brands. You will find more enthusiasts in consumers as far as innovation is concerned, because the market segment you're dealing with are socially very conscious, they are ecologically sensitive, and they are focused on sustainability. The typical signs of people who actually want to innovate. They're not conservative. So, you'll have to choose an ideal mix of audience. And so define, first of all, you define, okay, how many customers am I going to test it for before I say, yes, now I know my product roadmap. And then you break it up between consumers and between businesses, because both sides are going to actually have to see value that you're creating. Make sense to you?
Yeah. So in that case, according to the Rogers graph, so I'm looking at the creamy layer of the bottom two of the market, right?
As far as consumers are concerned, yes. And the brands who are creating, safe products are trying to cater to that market, right?
Yeah.
So you are looking at a niche market from that perspective. You're not looking at parlors as your customer, because parlors don't care. They'll buy the cheapest face cream.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Good. I think we are done.
Yeah. I think, thank you very much, Ravi, for these insights. Guys, this video recording will also be available on our YouTube channel shortly after we conclude this session. So in case you would like to revise or take a look at it again, you could visit the YouTube channel. You will get the details over a message and email following this session for you to keep track of it.
Thank you so much, Sudeep and Ravi.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you. All right, so have a great Sunday. All the best, and get in touch with us. The contact details will again be available on the message. In touch with us for anything, any kind of support you need, or something that would help to build up your businesses. And all the best. See you all.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.